Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Live with Little Data. I'm Edward, your host from Little Data, and I'm joined today by Hasan from Eastside Co. Welcome, Hasan.
Hi, Edward. Thanks for having me.
So, just give us a quick start of a little bit more about you and the agency.
Sure. Well, I'm Hasan. I am the Commercial Marketing Director here at Eastside Co. I've been working at Eastside Co for the last 8 or 9 years. So I've been in the e-commerce space for a very long time. My background is as a strategist, as a former kind of media buyer and paid specialist as well. My job here at Eastside is working closely with our brands as to how we kind of scale, grow, as well as work closely across our kind of marketing team, whether that's PPC, paid social, email marketing, or SEO. So I'm more of a kind of a holistic support across the team, across multiple different functions here at Eastside, as to how they can kind of get the best results when it comes to e-commerce.
Excellent. Well, I'm very, very qualified to talk about what we want to chat about today. I guess, firstly, a bit about Black Friday and how the tactics of that are evolving over the years, and particularly this year. And also then talking a bit about Meta, Facebook ads and Instagram and how that fits into the Black Friday playbook. But yeah, tell us a bit about how you see this year's Black Friday, Cyber Monday as opposed to last year's. I mean, it seemed like Black Friday got to a point where it just couldn't get any bigger in the e-commerce calendar. It's interesting, just logging into my video recording software Restream, it's got a big 50% off Black Friday offer right across the top of it. And I'm like, what, for a software product? Really? What, really?
Yeah.
I'm going to buy B2B software because it's Black Friday, but apparently so. So yeah, how do you sort of see this year as being different perhaps from last year and previous years?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Again, if you look on, I'm sure if we look at emails right now, we'll see all sorts of brands from all sorts of industries and sectors offering some sort of sale, which to your point as well, like you wouldn't normally typically associate them with. I think, compared to kind of last year, I think the biggest danger any brand or any brand owner or any marketer can do is assume that whatever has worked last year will work again this year. But we're seeing a lot of changes and trends going into this Black Friday. I think the first one being the timing of Black Friday seems to get earlier and earlier every year. Give it 10 years, it'll probably start in the summer at this rate. But it's starting to see earlier. I get the premise. I get the merit behind it. We have a few kind of active clients we're working with who start on the Friday before Black Friday, as well as the start of the month. There's pros and cons to that. You beat the rush. There's less costs involved, especially if you're trying to acquire new customers closer to Black Friday. There's people who probably just don't want to engage during the Black Friday period. Probably got plans, they're probably out and about on the weekend or on Friday, they're working, and probably want to just do their sales and their transactions well in advance. I myself have bought something through an early VIP kind of Black Friday deal through ASOS, and that's purely because I'm going to be away during that period. So there's definitely pros to it. Cons being it's not in line with payday, so people might not have kind of the disposable incomes to actually buy willy-nilly. And also, you're going to have customers who are just going to wait out because they think they can get a better deal on Black Friday itself. So that's one of the biggest trends we're seeing right now. And it's the first time we're actually seeing a lot of our brands, a lot of our clients who are actively wanting to do it much earlier. I think the second kind of trend we're seeing right now is that we have a lot of brands who are being a lot more selective around the kind of offering and the discounts and sales they're doing, which is quite refreshing to hear. Again, rewind 5 or 6 years ago, you see a lot of brands just doing a pretty standard site-wide discount of 20, 30%. Now it's getting a lot more granular and a lot more selective, which is the right way to approach it. I don't think Black Friday, Cyber Monday is for every brand. I think in cases I've worked with brands in the past who have been overly aggressive during Black Friday, and it's almost tarnished their brand. It almost cheapens the brand. You can kind of remove some of that premium nature as well. So there's a lot of brands that don't want to get lured into that. So I think
you were talking about a particular brand that you work with that got caught in this sort of the sort of negative spiral of discounting where consumer kind of waits for next discount, doesn't buy, then they feel like they have to launch more discounts throughout the year to get anyone buying. And yeah, it's sort of, you want to avoid getting sucked into that if you possibly can.
Absolutely. It's like DFS, right? You would never go to DFS and buy a sofa. I don't know if it's possible to buy a DFS sofa at full price, but
it's not discounted. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Well, and it sort of becomes a joke, doesn't it, with certain brands that, you know, that it's always off. And but part of that's about having confidence in the brand, isn't it? Because you say there are definitely some brands now that are just like, we don't do Black Friday. Like that is a part of their brand, is that we don't do discounting, we don't do cheap sales.
Yeah.
If you want us, you know where we are.
And I respect that. And I think a lot of consumers might respect that as well. But that's not to say they're not offering anything during Black Friday either. And I think this goes into another trend where brands are not kind of conforming to a site-wide discount, for example, but adding alternative value. And that could be things like bringing out new launches during Black Friday, a new collection, creating these VIP groups, creating new bundles or subscriptions. There's even Green Friday, which we have for a few sustainable clients that we work with, which is weirdly an anti-Black Friday movement, which is to focus on more kind of local brands who are running their practices a bit more sustainably. So we've got a mixed bag. In fact, we work with a very well-known, established pet care nutrition brand. And their focus for this Black Friday is on their loyalty program. So it's not a discount per se. It's incentivizing customers who have built up loyalty points over the course of a few months or the last year. And if they use it during Black Friday, they get to double it. So there's an incentive that isn't typically a sale or a discount. It's not cheapening the brand. It's not removing any of the premium nature of it, but it's still incentivizing and adding value to what is valued customers.
And that makes so much sense to me, because there's nothing that annoys your loyal customers more than feeling like some new person's got a much better discount than them that's been supporting you for years. So that's a feeling that you're going to get. And I mean, obviously it ties into a wider trend I'm sure you're seeing, which is brands wanting to do more kind of, you know, more with their loyalty programs and have a bit more of like a reason why you should be a member. But yeah, going back to Black Friday, I mean, one of the points you made earlier was also about the fact that there is as you say, quite a sizable number of consumers now that are reactionary. They don't want to do business with brands that are sort of part of that mix, and either they're happy not to take discounts at all, or as you say, they prefer to do it in their own time, maybe a different time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always tell all of our brands, you know, we try to plan at least 2 or 3 months in advance. And firstly, it all should start with what are those targets? What are those goals? You know, look at last year, leverage the data that you have right now. Is it a case that you're trying to emulate last year's performance, or do we have to be a bit more realistic and pragmatic, i.e., given certain factors that might be out of your control, you know, shifts in the economy, you know, consumers having less disposable income? Do you have products on the website that you used to sell last year that you don't now this year? Do you have high ticket items that are no longer there? Do you have stock that is kind of out of stock at the moment? So what we try to do is fact find as early as possible. What are those targets? What are those goals for Black Friday? And then really kind of try to develop a strategy as to how we're going to achieve that. I think the worst thing any brand or any kind of agency can do is be too reactive during Black Friday. You know, scale spend without any rationale, drop their discounts from 10 to 30%, just wildly, without any real approach or rationale besides trying to get some sort of sales. But I think that is a very risky way of approaching it. What we try to do is have a contingency plan, right? So we try to discuss with our clients, okay, what if you are going to do a discount, how much can you give? Like, what's the highest amount you can give? Is it up to 30%? Great. We try to define that, but we start off with a 10% sale. And then depending on how performance is going over that weekend, i.e. if they're not hitting their targets on the Friday, then we'll increase the sale into kind of 15% on the Saturday. If it still hasn't hit its target, increase it to 20%. But what
That makes so much sense, because it must be so hard to predict the consumer response to discount, because obviously it massively depends on how much they value the brand in the first place. There are certain brands, I guess if I was going to buy my new pair of AirPods off Apple, I'd probably be happy with a 10% discount, right? Because I know Apple does not do discounts.
yeah.
But, if I was going to buy, I don't know, some unknown brand of headphones, I'd probably only be persuaded by a 50% discount. So,
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's interesting, and I think this goes back to what I said earlier about just because something worked last year doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be working this year. And as we know from Black Friday, it can be so volatile. It can be so unpredictable as well. Competitors are going to be doing so much more than you, potentially offering much more discounts.
Yep.
But it's quite hard to not give in. Going onto a competitor's website, seeing they're doing 30% off, and not trying to kind of cave in and say, okay, we got to do 30% off as well. But ultimately, it boils down to, can you as a business afford that? I think I mentioned to you as well, Ed, about Gymshark, for example, is a great example of a client that really maximizes that Black Friday period. However, if you look at their Twitter account or their X account right now, they've posted on Monday about patiently waiting for the 70% off deal for Black Friday. Now that, as of Monday, would have been 2 weeks until Black Friday. So they can afford to have that low, where a lot of brands might not. And what we see with a lot of brands that we work with is that maybe they engage with their customers or the consumers too early, i.e. we're going to have this Black Friday deal. And then what they see is towards the end of October and the start of November, their sales just dip. And because all of their customers are just waiting for this deal. So there is a danger.
But it's clever that the Gymshark, the more I've thought about that, when you mentioned it before, is that obviously that's really like screwing all their competitors, because everyone's waiting for that Gymshark offer before they take anyone else's offer. No one else is going to be offering more than 70% off. So it's just basically causing the whole market to follow them and wait on their sale.
Exactly. And now you're going to have other competitors out there trying to kind of change their approach and change their strategy around Gymshark as well. So it's clever, but not a lot of brands can do that. Gymshark have the luxury to actually offer that sort of discounting as well. So we have to be really kind of tailored when it comes to where the brands are in their kind of life cycle. Have they been around for a year? Are they a startup? Have they been around for 10 years? What is feasible? And really kind of tailor a strategy towards what they're trying to achieve from Black Friday.
So let's talk a bit about Meta. We said we'd cover that, and you were saying that obviously you used to work, as a media buyer, and obviously well aware of some of the challenges with Meta back a couple of years ago. We've seen generally a resurgence. Like I would say this year, a lot of the brands we work with have reallocated spend towards there. What's sort of driving that, and how's that playing out?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I was a former media buyer. I used to manage Facebook accounts at peak iOS update, which was the worst time of my career. But I was fortunate enough to see the potential of Meta back then, and then I was quite disappointed to see, I guess, it not recover as I expected, straight after iOS. So I know the challenges, I know the confidence dips, both from a performance agency perspective, but also validating that to clients as well. I think where it's starting to see some resurgence, and we as an agency are starting to see a lot more clients requesting paid social work on Meta. We're starting to see a lot more brands inclined to spend higher levels of media spend as well. So this is all going towards the same direction, that Meta is actually starting to provide some meaningful results. And I think this is down to a few reasons. Number one, Meta has worked on its own or doubled down on its kind of ad ecosystem. I think they knew tracking and attribution was a big sticking point and is a worry for a lot of clients and customers. So one thing they have done is bring out features and smart campaigns like Advantage Plus, similar to our Performance Max. This is something we leverage a lot here at Eastside. And granted, I think the tracking and attribution of Facebook is still not anywhere perfect. But where I think doubling down on those sorts of smart kind of bidding campaigns is definitely where we're starting to see brands kind of move the needle when it comes to meta advertising. I think the second area is their creative platforms. So I think I mentioned to you before, Edward, a few years ago or 5 or 6 years ago, you really required a designer, a videographer, a graphic designer to create your assets, to create really cool and engaging videos. Now, fast forward a few years now, they've got their own native templates that any brand who doesn't have the resource or the luxury of outsourcing this to someone else to kind of whip up some quick assets for a certain brand, you can now do that for free. And these assets are actually really good. I know a lot of people use Canva. A lot of people have their own graphic designers that create assets on Adobe Photoshop. Not a lot of brands can do that. So the fact that Facebook has identified an opportunity where if they give their customers a platform where they can create their own assets for free using their templates, that will only incentivize them to spend more. So being able to have that more creative outlet is something that I think has helped quite considerably. And I think the third area, which I'll touch on, is there are other social media platforms out there that are obviously working amazingly, like TikTok, for example.
Yep.
It is a threat to a lot of other channels. It's the one area that has a lot of opportunity. It's constantly growing year on year. We're starting to see it as its own search engine. I think I mentioned before. I use it for destinations, top 10 places, recipes. It's rivaling that of kind of Google and kind of SEO tactics as well. But where I think Meta is maybe capitalizing is that there is still a stubborn bunch, including myself, who are reluctant to kind of install and download TikTok, but are still kind of regurgitating the same content that lives on TikTok, but then it comes over to Instagram. And I think those demographic, those people who are not willing to kind of accept TikTok are probably that's where Meta are really yielding those sorts of customers, because it is the same content just on a different platform. So I think that's really where they're starting to make some movement.
I guess also thinking about, you characterized it earlier before very well. Like, you've got basically Gen X on Facebook, then you've got millennials on Instagram, and you've got, TikTok on Gen Z. To be very sweeping about it. And but the reality is a lot of the spending power is still, in those two upper demographics, right? So one of the things that, Meta does have in its advantages of reach, particularly with the rich American consumers. I think it's. Just to go back to your first point about the attribution and the kind of use of Advantage Plus. So I think it's fascinating how Meta is encouraging advertisers to kind of leave the choice of which placement to the algorithm and not sort of tweak. I guess in early iterations of platform, there's a lot more settings of like how you could choose placement. But obviously, the reality is, as a marketer, you don't actually know what placement is best. It's all an experiment. So Advantage Plus basically says, look, let's just leave it to the algorithm. But, and this is my plug for a little data. Unless you're sending it the right optimization signal, unless you're telling the algorithm which ads actually led to sales, you're not going to get optimal not attribution, allocation of your ad budget to the performing creative and placement. So the pitch basically for our Meta connection is that by sending in more reliable server-side events, what they call a conversions API into Meta ads, you can boost the efficiency of that learning, which means that you're going to get higher return ad spend. And really what we see a lot is that brands are losing between like 20 and 30% of their conversions. And that equates to, let's say, a 20 to 30% inefficiency in the algorithm. And when you fix that, that can equate to a 20, 30% boost in that return ad spend. So it's not, it's a fairly significant amount of money for most brands. And I think, obviously it's important throughout the year, but it's obviously particularly important ahead of ramping up spend massively that you have this sort of, data tracking set up, because otherwise it's not that the campaigns are not going to work at all. Shopify has a decent enough out the box connector with the Facebook sales channel, but it's not perfect, and I think you can improve upon it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to that point, we have a kind of mutual client with Little Data as well. And again, there's a danger of taking what Facebook says as gospel. Obviously, you need to take it with a pinch of salt. But there is an example where we've got a joint client, and the data that Little Data kind of produced to us was really insightful to the point where it kind of changed our strategy and our approach, because I think we've been approaching it in maybe not in the most effective way, but I think there was insights and opportunities that Little Data kind of opened our eyes to, that helped us almost kind of mold our strategy to actually get the best for our clients. So yeah, absolutely agree with you there.
Yeah. I mean, so thank you. I mean, there's basically there's two benefits, right? One is better insights or better confidence that the ads are actually working, i.e., you can attribute the sales to the campaigns and ad spend. But then, as you say, there's actually genuine targeting opportunity, which means that actually the ads that do lead to sales can be boosted. And as a brand, Little Data, we don't use Meta a lot, but we use a lot of LinkedIn ads, and I can tell you, it's surprising when we look at, obviously we run a number of different creatives, and you can't predict which one works best. Sometimes one of them is just literally doubly converting, and obviously we allocate spend there if it's working. So yeah, to sort of wrap up, bring us back to kind of like how does Meta fit within a good BFCM playbook? I mean, what are you trying to do, both in terms of short-term sales, but also building for customer purchasing into 2025?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we try not to do is just focus on Meta as a kind of a siloed channel. We try to look at things holistically. So we try to leverage as much kind of relevant data as we can from the Facebook pixel, whether they have kind of added to basket, abandoned checkout, whatever kind of warm characteristics anybody has expressed on the website. So we try to, what we have been doing for a lot of clients is doing warming campaigns over the last kind of couple of weeks. So again, trying to avoid the kind of Gymshark approach, just because a lot of these brands probably don't have that luxury, but trying to warm them up that there will be this deal, but at the same time, simultaneously trying to get sales at the same time. But a lot of what we're doing is in conjunction with CRM. So we work very closely with our email marketing department, leveraging those kind of lookalike audiences, but obviously likewise pulling over sets of subscribers and exporting lists to kind of further maximize that kind of warming up period. So to the point when we get to kind of Friday, we're in a very, very good position that once we kind of set our ads live, we will be able to kind of capture those quite soon. But like I said, right now we're trying to position kind of paid social Meta as part of our kind of supporting asset in a wider, holistic, overarching strategy that encompasses Google Ads, but also CRM as well. So we're trying to kind of facilitate all of these channels with the kind of intention of getting these users through from first interaction on the Friday or prior to that during warming up activity all the way up to the Monday and after the Monday as well. So we've got some other cool ideas where which paid social Meta and CRM allows us to create individual segments based on those who have expressed an interest, added cart, abandoned checkout, but haven't converted, and creating these closed community type campaigns where after Monday, depending on how performance has gone, if we feel like we can still acquire some more sales post Cyber Monday, we'll create these individual campaigns that's not site-wide, that's not available to everyone, but only for those who have come engaged and interacted.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating, that interplay, as you say, of the Meta is with the email marketing, and actually it's not quite as simple as Meta being top of funnel all the time. Actually, there's kind of there's three points of the journey. Obviously, it can be top of funnel and finding genuinely people who've never heard about your brand before. It can be kind of mid funnel when you're retargeting people who maybe browse the site, browse a particular product category, and using dynamic product ads or similar to bring them back. But it can, as you say, be actually the bottom of the funnel, as you say, people who've already signed up for email newsletter, and you're basically building the audience in Klaviyo and exporting it back to Meta to retarget people who actually are, who are interested and are current customers, but just, trying to motivate them to actually get on and buy again. So I see sort of that's part of the reason I think why it's such a popular platform is it can play those three different roles.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's the strategy differs based on who the brand is. We work with a brand who sells a lot of well-known brands like Nike shoes and whatnot. But like I said, Nike speaks for itself. There's only so much you have to do on your end as a marketer to sell that in. You know the quality, you know the material, you know what you're going to get with a Nike trainer. So when it comes to Meta, it is a simple. It can be very bottom of the funnel retargeting based on exactly what that customer was desiring. So yeah, I think Meta has a lot of flexibility in terms of how we approach consumers throughout that kind of funnel as and when required.
Awesome. Well, we're pretty much at time now. So thank you very much for sharing your views. I do hope it's a successful peak season trading for all the brands you work with. As you say, it can be somewhat stressful that you might have to change tactics right in the middle of the sort of holiday weekend. But equally, as you say, it's not all doom and gloom. I think there are obviously brands you say that are intelligently opening into it, either playing the game of discounting and or in fact choosing not to play that game and going a different route.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can summarize, I think for anyone that's still looking for last minute kind of tips and advices, firstly, leverage your data. I mean, look at how last year performed. Look at what is realistic this year. Try to use alternative third-party tools like Little Data, for example. Get those insights and pockets of information that can really help you kind of mold a strategy for the most effective strategy over that kind of Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Focus on retention. I think that's a big one as well. Again, this is where I know I'm doing a bit of a plug-in, but this is where Little Data can support. Yeah. Acquisition costs are going to be super high, of course. So if you can focus on retention, focus on those repeat buyers, focus on people who are evangelists, ambassadors of the brands without actually paying them to do so. Those are going to be your quick wins, and that's how you're going to get more sales. And thirdly, have that contingency plan. If things don't go right for you in Black Friday, don't panic, don't go crazy, don't scale your spend wildly, don't increase your discount from 10 to 50%.
Yeah.
Have a contingency plan. If things aren't going to work out what your plan B is and be realistic with that.
Always have a plan B. That's definitely my motto. Thanks, Hasan. Great advice and great to chat to you again.